Welcome to Political Beatdown. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Cohen. Much to discuss today. Donald Trump showed up in court in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. An expert witness, Eli Bartov, testified. Donald Trump showed up whining, looked very panicked. And then this testimony by Eli Bartov was absolutely absurd and basically said, yeah, all of that things that you're saying are fraud that Donald Trump committed. You see, those were just errors, and Donald Trump didn't try to conceal it. So how could it be fraud if he used that in his other financial statements? What will break that all down? Donald Trump filed a notice of appeal to Judge Tanya Chutkin's order denying his motion to dismiss the indictment in Washington, D.C. on absolute presidential immunity grounds. Donald Trump then brought a motion to stay the entire proceedings pending the notice of appeal. And get this, Cohen, Donald Trump says that based on his own erroneous view of the law, or as he would say, his own understanding of the law, Trump is going to proceed based on that understanding and the authorities set forth herein, absent further court order, which means Donald Trump on his own is saying that he will not participate in further pretrial motions, defense disclosures, Classified Information Procedure Act hearings, and jury selections. He's saying, I'm out. I expect any moment now a scathing order from Judge Tanya Chutkin and a motion from special counsel Jack
You
Smith.
know who says things like that, Ben? You know who says things like that? A
Not innocent people.
A king. No, a dictator, a king, a monarch, a Führer. People who don't feel that the law applies to them. And of course, who the law doesn't apply to? The king. It's right. I mean, it's his world. He can do whatever he wants. The funny thing is, what he doesn't seem to understand is while he's electing not to participate in any of these pretrial motions or hearings or voir dire or whatever it might be, doesn't make a difference. The system continues to roll, meaning, okay, you'll find out what the decision is, probably by watching television or getting somebody to hand you some sort of an email that somebody's giving you the bullet points on. But the process doesn't stop simply because Donald says that it stops. The process is continuing. And again, up until the point that, God forbid, a million times, that he becomes president of the United States again, which, of course, as I said last night on my appearance on Joy Reid, he's using it as a get-out-of-jail-free card. But until that day comes, that get-out-of-jail-free card doesn't exist.
If you go through his motion for a stay pending his appeal, he cites two cases. The first case is a recent Supreme Court decision in a case called Coinbase v. Bielski, 2023 June case. That case relates to the determination of arbitrability in cases. And there it says, on an interlocutory appeal challenging a denial of a motion for arbitration, a district court proceeding is stayed or paused. That's in the context, though, of arbitration. And then the other case, get this, Cohen, that Donald Trump cites is Blasingame versus Trump. December 1, 2023. Sound familiar? We talked about it last week. That was the case where the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals says that Donald Trump does not have absolute presidential immunity in civil cases for his conduct relating to the January 6th insurrection. That's where a bunch of D.C. police officers and members of Congress sued Donald Trump for monetary damages. Trump made essentially the identical argument in a civil context that was denied by Judge Tanya Chutkin in the criminal context. And the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals said, nope, you're not entitled to absolute presidential immunity in civil cases because your conduct constituted election-related conduct. This was not part of your Article 2 responsibilities. This was part of your bogus stop the steal election stuff. So Donald Trump is citing a case that rejected his plea for absolute presidential immunity as the basis to stay a decision denying his claim for presidential immunity. You don't get more BS and frivolous than that, Michael
Well,
Cohen.
clearly the judge didn't confer with the legal scholar amongst legal scholars, and I'm referring to Alina Habba, who has used that same line of stupidity over and over and over again. I mean, it is actually comical. They believe that Donald Trump, because he was a former president, that he has absolute immunity from any litigation ever, not just in the past, but any litigation going forward also. I mean, it's truly an incredible, incredible, just idea that a former president has absolute presidential immunity for anything ad infinitum. It's really amazing. It's only something that Donald could dream up, and Alina Habba could continue to try to promote.
And Judge Tanya Chutkin, in her order denying his claim for absolute presidential immunity, said presidents are not kings and you are not the president. A former president does not have absolute immunity when it comes to criminal exposure. The very nature of why we have a constitution, if you look at the Constitution from a structural, textual, or historical standpoint, it would undermine the very foundation of our democracy.
Yep.
The reaction of why we have a democracy, because we rejected kings and monarchs and despots here in the United States. And now, to your point, Cohen, Donald Trump is saying he's going to proceed based on the understanding of the authorities set forth herein. What, the Coinbase case? Based on arbitration, and then the Blasingame versus Trump case, the case involving you, Donald Trump, that says you don't have absolute presidential immunity in civil cases when it relates to elections. At one point, I want to show you, Cohen, too, because you say that Donald Trump is just trying to run as a get out of jail free card. Here's the projection coming from his family, and you comment on all this.
What a shocker.
Lara Trump saying that the reason that President Joe Biden is running for re-election is, well, play the clip, Salty.
It's very interesting to hear Joe Biden say that I guess the only reason he's decided to run is because of Donald Trump. Well, is that because he thinks that Donald Trump might investigate his family even further? You look at this situation with Hunter Biden, I think a lot of people might draw some correlation there and say, well, maybe the only reason that Joe Biden is trying to hang on to power is because his family depends on him trying to continue the cover-up that we know has happened for the Biden crime family. It's very interesting. This is nothing new. This is part of the politics that we see here in the United States of America. But people know very well that Donald Trump is not a dictator, of course.
Yes, and I thought the same thing when you see all these documents and the subpoenas and the bank records coming out. Maybe Joe Biden's running for another reason. That's to.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
It's really,
can't make this stuff up, Cohen.
Yeah. When I saw that, if you follow me on my Twitter account at Michael Cohen 212, I just responded right back to Newsmax, which, I happen to know Chris Ruddy, the president CEO of Newsmax. And look, I get it. He's running a business, and his business is predicated on, of course, promoting the bullshit, which is exactly what his viewers and his online, paper, it's who they are, it's just who they are. And they just continue to promote these lies and bullshit. But on my Twitter, or I should say X account, I turned around and said, low IQ Lara seems to miss the point. Donald Trump, 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. Joseph Biden, 0. You get the point? And, that, of course, went viral, which is funny. And I'm pretty sure Laura must have seen it. But she's an idiot. And the fact that Newsmax is permitted to put out this type of misinformation, this disinformation, I mean, it's amazing to me that not once have they turned around and questioned Jared and Ivanka's $640 million income during the 4 years that they were senior advisors to the president? Not once has Newsmax brought that up. I'll tell you another thing that Newsmax hasn't brought up either. How about the $2+ billion that Jared received a few months after leaving the White House, right at the end after Joe Biden won? He gets over $2 billion from the Saudi government, despite the fact that the finance committee for the Saudi Investment Authority questioned why they were even entertaining giving Jared Kushner any money, as this is not his field of expertise, nor has he ever proven himself to be competent pursuant to their rules, regulations, and so on. Nobody's ever asked that question on Newsmax. Nobody asks that question on OAN or any of these other ultra right-wing papers and stations. I mean, it's truly amazing that they are so far to the right. At least try to be a little centrist, on this. It's amazing. And look, I've been saying that that's Donald Trump's superpower, is the ability to project his own faults onto somebody else and make people believe that what he's saying is actually accurate.
Look, North Korea, Russia, they would be envious of the right-wing propaganda echo chamber that is now surrounding Donald Trump. It is that utterly absurd, and they can't even echo negative sentiments about him. They can't even hint at it. Like, let me be very clear. If Hunter Biden committed crimes, he should be held accountable for those crimes. Period. End of story. I'm not out there defending Hunter Biden in the federal criminal case. And I'm just saying, here's the thing with Hunter Biden. He has offered to testify publicly before the House Oversight Committee. No conditions attached, no time limitations.
Only one condition attached, Ben.
That it be in public.
That it be public.
That it be public, that it be transparent. So then where I do defend him is that when these MAGA Republicans who said that they were open to having that exact forum take place, Republicans wake up in the morning and the first thing they say is Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden. Well, you have the opportunity and now you're saying, oh, what we really wanted to do here the whole time is secret depositions. I want to show you this, Cohen. This was from I guess they're calling it a debate on News Nation, the Republican debate. Just watch Chris Christie, who, again, I disagree with on most things, but he is at least calling balls and strikes when it comes to our democracy during these debates and the threat that Donald Trump poses. Watch this, where Chris Christie says to Ron DeSantis, do you think Trump is fit? You can't even say it. You can't even acknowledge that Trump is not fit. Here, play this clip.
Is he fit? You have your thing.
Is he fit or isn't he? No, I don't have my thing. He's the thing. Is he fit or isn't he?
You're talking about him being 80 years old.
It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't get elected. That's up to the people.
Governor DeSantis, let him finish.
We have an opportunity to do somebody who's in.
DeSantis, let him finish.
Ron,
I think we have an opportunity to do somebody who is in the prime of their life. You don't have to worry about.
Cohen, when this is what they do all the time, and you see James Comer do this, you see Jim Jordan do this, like whenever a Democrat or whoever is just making a valid point, an evidence-based, thoughtful point and position, what do? Just talk over him, shout him down, give him a nickname, like a nasty bully name. You're a Smurf. You're a Smurf. You're this, you're that. That's the thing, Cohen. The discourse needs to be elevated. We need to be able to have thoughtful, deliberative discussions.
Yeah, but Ben, here's the problem with everything that happened last night at that fourth debate. First of all, Chris Christie was making an incredibly poignant point. And what was that? The point is is that Donald Trump was not there. In fact, he hasn't been at any of the 3 previous debates. Why? Because he doesn't want to expose himself. Why should he? He right now appears to be gliding in to the nomination for the Republican Party. And instead of being there and talking about the issues, knowing, of course, that he would be attacked, I'd like to see somebody like DeSantis or Ramaswamy or even Nikki Haley attack Donald. I don't think that they would. I think they would do it in the most respectful of ways, because here's my point. Chris Christie laid it out even better than I could, believe it or not. He turned around and he goes, none of the 4 of us on the stage today are going to be the Republican nominee so long as Donald keeps skating through all of the things that he currently is facing. Now, Christie did, of course, turn around and say that there is a chance, assuming that he is ultimately held accountable in any of these criminal matters, and then loses a tremendous amount of vote. However, right now, as it stands, everybody on that stage is vying for what? Vice President, Secretary of State, Chief of Staff, ambassador, who knows what that they're vying for. And that was the point he was making, that the attacks on one another, and Christie was really solid on this point, the attacks against Nikki Haley, the attacks against Ramaswamy, even though Chris Christie turned around and laid him out again for the second or third time. It doesn't mean anything. It's not doing anything other than giving themselves some sound bites to raise money, at which point Ramaswamy then went in, he attacked Nikki Haley as being corrupt. I mean, it is kind of funny that Ramaswamy would say that, but it was a basic shit show. I only watched it so that we could come back and, sit with our brigaders and talk about it for a few minutes. Otherwise, it really wasn't even worth watching. It's kind of like watching a baseball game the day after the baseball game was already played and you already know the outcome. We know the outcome here. Chris Christie is dying at the vine, right? Ramaswamy is right there, even below or right next to Chris Christie. Nikki Haley has a whole slew of problems, and Ron DeSantis is possibly the most flawed Republican that could possibly be, a potential nominee. He's just so flawed. I'm not even sure that if he ran right now for his governorship that he would win. I mean, he's really getting hammered, including in the state of Florida. So it was a total joke. It was bullshit. It was set up, obviously, a long time ago, and they potentially thought that Donald was going to do the right thing as a potential nominee, as the front runner of the Republican Party, and show up and answer questions that are relevant to the American people. But instead, like you said, Ben, we get this cackling nonsense from just people who have no chance unless one of 2 things happens. Donald drops dead or he ends up behind bars before the nomination or before the election.
It's why, though, we highlight Chris Christie on this network. And again, I can say I disagree with Chris Christie on probably most issues. Fundamentally, though, when it comes to our democracy, there's agreement there. And that shouldn't be the floor right now. But unfortunately, you have the Republican Party below that floor. At the most basic level, all political parties should be against dictatorships. They should be against idiocracy. They should be against all of the hatred that is spewed by Donald Trump and just the clear, blatant lies and gaslighting by the MAGA. But that's not the case right now. Let me show you this right here. I want to show you 2 clips of Chris Christie from this debate. And then I want to compare that to Vivek Ramaswamy. But first, let me show you this clip of Chris Christie saying that the other candidates on the stage don't want to talk about something. Play this clip.
The fifth guy, who doesn't have the guts to show up and stand here, he's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is the truth needs to be told. And for us to go 17 minutes without discussing the guy who has all those gaudy numbers you talked about is ridiculous. I'm in this race because the truth needs to be spoken. He is unfit. This is a guy who just said this past week that he wants to use the Department of Justice to go after his enemies when he gets in there. I mean, the fact of the matter is he is unfit to be president, and there is no bigger issue in this race, Megyn, than Donald Trump, and those numbers prove it.
I'm going to show you this next clip of Chris Christie where he tells the others standing on the stage, be very careful with what you are doing right now. Play the clip.
His conduct is unacceptable. He's unfit, and be careful of what you're going to get. If you ever got another Donald Trump term, he's letting you know, I am your retribution. He will only be, Elizabeth, he will only be his own retribution. He doesn't care for the American people. It's Donald Trump first.
And I want to compare that to Vivek Ramaswamy. And I want to say this, and the fact that I even have to say this before showing a clip at a Republican debate is horrifying. What you are about to hear is all disinformation, sickening lies. And yet this is one of the main candidates for the Republican nomination. This is one of the main people seeking that vaulted nomination. And by the way, what Vivek Ramaswamy is saying here pretty much parrots and tracks the things that Donald Trump says. This is ridiculous. Play this clip.
Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform? That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech? That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false? There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who were licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking him and criticizing him when it's convenient.
Governor Christie.
Now, if you're a moderator,
Ramaswamy is one sick son of a bitch. There's no other way to describe him. First of all, he should be investigated himself. To those who don't know where he made his money, many people are saying it had to do with a pharma deal that he did through a shell corporation, through a SPAC, and he raised well over $1 billion on a drug that had already been proven not to be effective. And what he did is they went ahead, they pulled out all of the negatives, and they tried to then put it in again to the FDA after buying it from a big pharma who was shocked that somebody would be stupid enough to even buy this formula. It had to do with Alzheimer's. And then somehow or another, he ends up selling out his interest a day before the FDA came out and for the 5th time rejected the formula as not being effective. And so that's where he made his money, this piece of shit. Talking about January 6th. You're right. It was a big, giant, government conspiracy right? The whole thing was a conspiracy. Everything with these morons is a conspiracy. The only thing that is a conspiracy is Donald Trump's nonsense that they all keep regurgitating over and over. You know, I was saying when I was on Joy Reid last night, I've been saying exactly what Chris Christie has been saying now as it relates to Donald Trump's authoritarian wannabe destruction of democracy and the installation of himself as the king or the Führer. And I even turned around and I said on television yesterday that one of the things that you will see if this maniac gets back into office is he will have us all lined up on the streets, right? And he will have, us all saluting him, Heil Hitler, because and also in the background through the earpiece, I hear everybody cracking up in the background. That's what I wrote. That's what I said. I said, Heil Hitler, because that's who Donald Trump is, and that's who Donald Trump wants to be. He knows the only way for him to finish out his life, not being legitimately who he is, the failure that he is. After all these years of conning the entire world on what a massive success he is, the only way is to get back into the White House. And again, I've said this before and I'm going to repeat it. He will take every 1%er's dollar. He will take Elon Musk's money, and Elon could shake his head and say, no, impossible. I would fight it in court. You don't understand. Every judge, in order to remain a judge, will have to sign a loyalty oath to Donald. Every federal court judge will have to sign a loyalty oath. Every military individual will have to sign a loyalty oath. Every general, every person in that transition team book, all like 1,600 plus individuals will have to sign a loyalty oath to Donald J. Trump. And let me be very clear about this. The only time somebody forces you to sign a loyalty oath is when that person wants to be an autocrat, when they want to be the king. And he will then be able to turn around and go to people like Elon Musk. He will turn around and say, how much are you worth? Oh, 300 billion? No, you're worth 1 billion. The other 299, he's going to have them transfer it immediately to some bank account of his that, will only be his. Exactly what Mohammed bin Salman did. And it is going to be truly the end of democracy as we know it. He will then go ahead and do the things he said that he is going to do. He is going to have Joint Chief of Staff Mark Milley executed. He's going to have this guy, Michael Davis, as the Attorney General. Hard to believe that we will have somebody with more complicit in what Donald wants than our former Attorney General, Bill Barr. But this guy, Mike Davis, will do whatever Donald says. He is a true, in the dumpster cult of Donald. He is right there, neck high into it. Whatever Donald says, he will do. And that will infringe upon every single one of our constitutional rights. And they will do it with glee.
There will then be the reporter fact checkers who are going to say, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump never used those specific words. He never said those exact statements. Look, when Donald Trump says he wants to be a dictator, when he says, I'm going to be a dictator for a day, from on day one, the fact checkers will say, but he didn't say he's going to be a dictator on day two. Or they'll try to put context. They'll go, he was obviously just joking. He didn't really mean that. No.
But what I said yesterday as well, because Joy asked me the same question. Yes, he will not be the dictator on day two. He will be the king. He will be the Führer. That's what he's counting on. That's what's rolling around in that head of his. Yeah, okay. I will not be the dictator on day two. I will be the Führer, or I will be the king. I will be the monarch. That's what I had said, and I'm I stand behind that statement.
Want to tell everybody that we will be holding our exclusive Zoom meeting. So if you ever wanted to meet Michael Cohen, you can do that. We're going to be doing that December 11th at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern time. We're about to make that announcement on our Patreon. So to all of our patrons, Michael Cohen and I look forward to meeting you then. To everybody who's ever wanted to meet Michael Cohen in an exclusive Zoom meeting, ask Michael Cohen questions, and hear us on that exclusive meetup, go to patreon.com/political beatdown, patreon.com/political beatdown. Every time we do that, I have so much fun. And I know there's a lot of people out there who want to get to meet you, Michael Cohen, in that way. So that's patreon.com/political beatdown. When we come back from this quick break, I want to talk about everything that went down in the New York Attorney General civil fraud trial. I want to talk about Donald Trump's post saying that I told my wonderful son, Eric, not to testify at a rigged trial. That and more after this quick break. Lomi is the only appliance that prevents food waste from stinking up your kitchen and polluting the planet. Now that I've invested in a Lomi, it's changed the way I deal with my food waste. Lomi is the biggest innovation in the modern day kitchen since the dishwasher. Lomi has helped me turn my home into a climate solution. Now I can transform my organic waste into nutrient-rich Lomi earth that I can feed to my plants, lawn, or garden instead of sending it to the landfill. I can help the environment and make my life easier. In just 4 hours, Lomi transforms almost anything you eat into nutrient-rich plant food at the push of a button. It's smart, simple food recycling that fits my space perfectly. Cut the chore of doing the trash in half and eliminate bugs and odors in your kitchen. And here's the bonus. You get to feed your lawn and garden with an all-natural fertilizer that you just created out of your food scraps. All my food scraps, plant clippings, and even those leftovers I forgot in the back of the fridge can go back into my garden, helping me grow more nutritious food at home. I learned that food waste makes up a huge portion of our personal carbon footprint also. By reducing the amount of food I send to landfill, I'm helping to do my part for the planet. Whether you want to start making a positive environmental impact or just grow a beautiful garden, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/beat and use the promo code BEAT to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/beat, BEAT, and use promo code BEAT at checkout. Thank you, Lomi, for sponsoring this episode. Welcome back. We are live on Political Beatdown. Donald Trump showed up at the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. You're right. I got to put up my dukes right there. An expert by the name of Eli Bartov testified. He claimed to be an accounting expert. That's Donald Trump showing up right there. Eli Bartov actually testified in another case back in 2019 as a witness for the New York Attorney General's office. You know how Donald Trump says they've never brought any other case under this statute before? Well, they did. They brought in multiple cases under this statute. And back in 2019, the New York Attorney General filed a case under this statute against Exxon, except Eli Bartov thought it was against Enron and continued to call the defendant Enron over and over again. So naturally, a perfect expert witness for Donald Trump to hire. And Eli Bartov basically said, there can't possibly be fraud if Donald Trump was showing this other set of books to the lenders, the bankers, the insurance companies. And because there's no signs that he tried to conceal it, then he didn't commit fraud. Well, Eli Bartov doesn't really understand what this case is about then, because the case basically is Donald Trump kept separate sets of books. When he wanted to decrease the taxes he was paying, there was one set of books that said, well, Mar-a-Lago is a commercial property and it's a club, and that's why it shouldn't be treated as a residential property. The other set of books was it is a residential property when it came to taking out favorable loans. And it was the same kind of scheme that repeated it over and over again. That's why there were undisputed facts. But Eli Bartov says, no, those were just mere errors, and those errors shouldn't be factored into the equation of fraud. And then he basically said that the valuations for the properties were accurate. Then Donald Trump went out and said, see, look what the expert said. Look what the expert said. I mean, it is just so absurd, Michael Cohen. And that's basically who testified the full day today. Eric didn't show up. I want to show you what Donald Trump said. The reason why
before we jump into Eric, Ben, there's also a fact that came out that the second that this question was asked by the AG's prosecutor, Kevin Wallace, all of a sudden my phone started to blow up. So I knew something must have gone on at the trial. And they asked him a question: how long have you been doing work for Trump or the Trump Corporation? And he put a time period. I think it was something like 18 months to 2 years. And they asked him, well, how much have you been paid so far for that work? And the answer was it was over $520,000. And so they turned around, and Wallace turned around and said, well, basically, they brought you on because you're willing to be bought and to say whatever they want you to say. And the guy, of course, got incredibly angry at such a disrespectful remark for this professor of accounting at NYU. I mean, it was, from what I understand, it was an absolute shit show. And by the way, the shit show is still ongoing. Normally, these matters are over generally at like 4:30. So we're certainly over that time frame. But I understand that the lawyers are all arguing over Bartov's, over his communications and over Bartov's testimony today at trial. Here's the funniest part about the whole thing. Nothing that Bartov said actually helps Donald in terms of what is left in this case. And Ben, you and I talk about this all the time. For whatever reason, Trump's lawyers think that they're going to make a record for appeal that is anything other than how much money, meaning the disgorgement, that Judge Engoron is going to slap him with. Is it going to be $1 million? Is it going to be what Tish James wants as a base of $250 million? Or is it going to be what Michael Cohen says that Donald's and the company and others actually really legitimately would owe? And I say it's in excess of $600 million. Nothing that Bartov brought up today benefits Donald in that respect. In fact, when they asked him about the triplex, and he stated that the numbers were grossly inflated, between 2011 and 2012, where Donald added $100 million to the value of the apartment. And they did that based upon the over-exaggeration of the price per square foot, as well as the over-exaggeration of the size of the apartment in terms of square footage, 11,000 to 33,000. He said, yes, those numbers are significantly overinflated. I mean, that's a devastating ass kick right then and there. And they had to appreciate that a simple question like that was going to be asked. And I would have done the same with Mar-a-Lago. I would have done the same with Seven Springs. I would have done the same with the commercial real estate over at 40 Wall Street based upon numbers. And that's what they should have done. But I wish I was there, because that's what I understand that they did do.
And look, Eli Bartov, for $550,000 or whatever the Trump organization paid him, totally useless, isn't going to matter. But who could have mattered is Eric Trump during direct examination. We'll recall that Eric Trump sat for cross-examination by the New York Attorney General. He was compelled to show up, but his own lawyers didn't choose at that time to ask direct examination questions a few weeks back when he testified. So they had told the judge before that they were going to call him in their case, in the defense case. Now, Eric is supposed to be the leader of the organization. The buck stops with him during the relevant time period, right? And Donald Trump said in his deposition, Eric is the one who would know all of these things. So Eric's testimony, Michael Cohen, is probably the most important testimony you could hear from out of anybody here to explain the discrepancies. And Eric likes to go on Fox and the right-wing disinformation echo chambers and talk about how unfair this is and how unfair the questioning is. Well, you have the ability to have your own lawyer conduct a direct examination and walk you through, not in an adversarial way like cross-exam, but on direct in a complimentary way. And the judge would let it all in. I mean, heck, the judge let Don Jr. talk about a PowerPoint that was not even introduced as evidence. So you can walk the judge through everything and explain why you were so diligent, why it is the New York Attorney General was mistaken, if that's what you believe, why you think that all of these things are the way they are, how you exercise diligence. You have the ability to defend yourself. And not only to defend yourself, but to speak positively about the company that you supposedly want to protect. Now, if I gave you that hypothetical, unless you were worried about criminal exposure, or unless you did not want to help the company, or unless you knew that your testimony would be more damaging to the company, why would you not testify there? So to all the people, we call it MAGA-splaining here on the Midas Touch Network and Political Beatdown. So you don't understand, Ben and Michael Cohen. Let me tell you how corporations work. You don't really know anything. Why wouldn't the leader of the corporation want to go into court and explain the diligence that was done if that actually took place? Because it didn't take place.
It's actually more than just Eric. The way that when Donald became president, that the company was being run, Alan Weisselberg was to be the executor, and the two trustees was Eric Trump and Don Jr. And so Don Jr. and Eric, one of the two of them, along with Weisselberg, had to sign all of the checks and approve contracts and anything relative or relevant to the operation of the company. So you're right. Eric certainly should have been up there. But the reason he wasn't is because Eric couldn't keep his lies straight the first time. And I think that the concern was that he had already put himself into a potential perjury situation. And so as to avoid that and avoid giving the government, the attorney general, prosecutors, the ability to really smack him around on cross-examination, they decided that Eric's testimony wouldn't be necessary. Well, okay, makes perfect sense. I mean, it's possibly one of the few moves by the Trump C team, legal team, that they've done that actually is smart. I mean, I never would have put him on in the first place, but certainly putting him on for this second go around would have been catastrophic to Eric.
It's too late for them. If they were smart, they should have known they were dead to rights. This is what I would have done if I was representing them, which I never would want to do. You'd stipulate to liability because they got you. And then you would pretty much focus your entire defense on the damages. Yep. And you would just try to go through and basically say, here were the errors that we made. You'd show up, you'd show empathy, you'd say you were apologetic, and you would say, but the damages aren't $800 million to $1 billion. They're more like $50 million. And you would make a whole damages case. You wouldn't argue that you did not engage in the underlying fraudulent conduct. And you could say, oh, Ben, are you giving them hints? No, it's way too late for them to take that approach, because now what's so clear is actually the damages seem way higher than they may even ever have otherwise been, because they've exposed even more depths to their fraudulent behavior, and their conduct in court re-emphasizes all of the fraud. So to the extent any judge would consider giving somebody a benefit of the doubt or a tie goes to the runner on close calls, that's just simply not going to happen here. Just take a look at this post that Donald Trump made. He goes, "I told my wonderful son, Eric, not to testify tomorrow at the rigged trial brought about by Attorney General Letitia James' campaign promise that without knowing anything about me, I will get Trump. She ran for AG, then governor of New York, and lost. Eric has already testified perfectly, unlike the star witness who admitted he lied. So there is no reason to waste any more of this crooked court's time on having him say the same thing over and over again as a witness for the defense, us. His young life has already been unfairly disturbed and disrupted enough on this corrupt witch hunt. Besides, I will be testifying on Monday in this shameful no jury allowed trial. Happy banks and insurance companies, no victims, great financial statements, perfect disclaimer clause, but a corrupt attorney general and judge." And look, I know there's so much data out.
I like the fact that he threw me in there, right? You know, the star witness is a liar. You know, it's amazing because, you know, to those of you who may have seen and they follow my, you know, my travails, I put in a request to the judge, as I told you I was going to, government, meaning the Southern District of New York, and this is for the complete termination of the remaining 1 year supervised release that I am still on, especially after everything that I've done and I've gone through and been put through. You would think this is a no-brainer. Well, no, not when you have somebody like Nicholas Roos of the Southern District of New York, the only guy remaining from the entire prosecutorial line, which, of course, again, was 48 hours of very hard work, you know, in their threats against my wife, you know, to have her indicted and handcuffed and walked out as well. What's amazing is he continued and spewed the same lies in the reply paper to the judge that Alina Habba was doing. And in fact, he used the parts that Alina Habba used where I claimed, yes, that I had lied to Judge Pauly, the sentencing judge, right? I mean, what it didn't do is it didn't go on to the the cross, or the redirect, I should say, where government asked me to please explain, which I did. They purposely omitted that section, which is something, of course, that they're parroting. And it's hard to imagine. Nicholas Roos, the Southern District of New York, is parroting Donald Trump and Alina Habba in order to confuse or to dissuade the judge from granting me this relief. And it's a relief that is incredibly common in this Bureau of Prison, Department of Corrections scenario. So I just find it amazing how even somebody like a Nicholas Roos, a Southern District of New York prosecutor, can be so stupid as to listen to Donald and Alina and parrot the same bullshit in order, again, to win a motion.
I mean, just though the whiny victimhood of Donald Trump, my poor little son. I mean, Eric Trump is a 40-year-old or 41-year-old man who's leading the organization. It's my poor little son doesn't want to show up and testify. I want to show you.
Poor boy, nobody loves me.
He's just a poor boy.
Soon to be a poor family.
Well, right here, Donald Trump, this is him out in court. I saw someone post about this. He's kind of like one of those wind-up dolls, right? Where you kind of pull the string and he just says the same things over and over again. And he's got 3 things that he says. It's such a great comment. So here's me kind of pulling the Trump wind-up doll. All right, ready? Wind-up doll number 1, pull the string.
I said this is a great company. One of the best. I think they said the best company that they deal with. And this is what I have to go through. Fraud from a fraudulent attorney general that valued a incredible club in Florida that's worth 50 to 100 times more than they put down. But they fraudulently valued it low. This woman should be under investigation for what she did. She's a disgrace.
Wind up doll number 2. What does he have to say? Hold on, pull the string.
No victims. There's no victims. The banks love Trump. A lot of loans weren't paid off, but they weren't by me. The company is a great company. You heard what they said. Even the bank said this is a great company. One of the best. I think they said the best company that they deal with.
Yeah,
Number
absolutely.
3. Hold on. I want one more wind up doll. Hold on.
Into our country. This is what's happened to our country. We're a failing nation because of stuff like this. You heard things today that nobody knew because I was a private company. I am a private company.
Yep, and there's the wind-up doll that you were referring to. A friend of mine was in a store, and that was actually in the store, sent it to me. I wonder if those are the same 3 things or 10 things that continuously come out of Donald's mouth. But here's the interesting thing. I would love for one of these idiots that is sitting there and just ignoring and just taking down what Donald says and putting it out on the airwaves, turn around and ask him, well, if all the banks were so in love with you, and it was really a great company, it's a great company, even though all the banks said so. So how come the only bank that would actually deal with you is Deutsche Bank? And when you couldn't get another bank, you ended up using this fund, the one that Jack Weisselberg, the son of Alan Weisselberg, where they borrowed like $300 million. And, you can't use the property of like 1290 Avenue of the Americas or the Bank of America building in San Francisco that he has a 30% interest in, because that's operated by Vornado. And yes, Vornado is a legitimate company worth obviously a ton more than Trump, and they have banking relationships. So it didn't matter that Trump was affiliated with it. They were doing the deal because it was a Vornado deal. That's the whole point. So he talks about how wonderful his company is and how no banks lost money. No bank would do business with Donald. It's the same thing as to why he has Alina Habba there, or Cliff Robert, personal injury litigator out of Long Island, right? Or you have Chris Kise that's there. I mean, the reason why is because no law firm wants to deal with Donald because he doesn't pay, because he lies. And then he wants you as the lawyer to continue to promote that lie. And he doesn't care what happens to the lawyer or the lawyer's license. All he wants is what he wants, despite the fact it is improper. It is such bullshit, no matter how many times he wants to tell you how great of a company that it was. No banks wanted to work with him other again than that hedge fund, that Jack Weisselberg, Ladder Capital, and also Deutsche Bank. That's it. Other than that, he had no one.
That's something that you know a little bit about as well, Michael Cohen. And as President Biden has said before, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. So I just showed you a fascist wind-up doll right there. And I want to compare that, though, to at the exact same time that string was being pulled from Donald Trump in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case, President Biden was giving an important speech today as well. I want to show you what President Biden had to say. Let me show you this. Play this clip.
Look, I know we have our divisions at home. Let's get past them. This is critical. Petty, partisan, angry politics can't get in the way of our responsibility as a leading nation in the world. The entire world is watching. The entire world is watching. What will the United States do? And think if we don't support Ukraine, what's the rest of the world going to do? What's Japan going to do, which is supporting Ukraine now? What's going to happen in terms of the G7? What's going to happen in terms of our NATO allies? What are they going to do? If we walk away now, it will only embolden other would-be aggressors. So I'm calling on Congress to do something and do the right thing, to stand with the people of Ukraine, Stand against the tyranny of Putin. Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done.
I show these comparisons because legacy media does not show these comparisons.
Yep.
They both sides these issues, and not only that, but promote Donald Trump's MAGA movement of fascism plus idiocracy as though it is some normal thing. It is not. It is not. And we need leadership. We need normalcy. It is okay if you don't agree with President Biden on a lot of issues. That's fine. I don't agree with him on every issue. It is okay if you don't agree with us on a lot of issues. That is great. Michael Cohen and I disagree on a lot of issues. We have debates over things and ways of how we think that services can be delivered better to the American people. And by the way, it is okay, I feel, that I disagree with Chris Christie on a lot of issues, a Republican. But when it fundamentally comes to our democracy and normalcy and the very real threat of authoritarianism here in the United States, we can't equivocate. We can't both sides. It's not funny. And we have to recognize that in the White House now, we have an adult. We have someone who exhibits traditional leadership skills of somebody who should be in that position. And I prefer an experienced statesman or statesperson over whatever the heck it was that we've been showing you in the earlier part of this show. Michael Cohen, I want to give you the final word.
You know, one of the things, well, let me start with my two-finger salute. Vivek Ramaswamy has to get the two-finger salute. He is such a fucking tool that I'm 100% certain that his ass is jealous of the shit that comes out of his mouth. He is by far the most disgraceful of all of these Republicans that were even on and trying to run. And I think there was like a dozen of them early on. He is by far the least qualified. He may think he's the most qualified, the most intelligent. That he is an absolute fucking disgrace. And the fact that he could turn around and try to kiss Trump's ass talking about January 6th. And look, I've had Harry Dunn on, my Mea Culpa podcast, which is now on the Midas Touch Network. You should go subscribe, listen, rate, share with your friends. It's the one with the blue background. Harry Dunn is a truly decent man. He's a man who has given his life to the service. He is one of the Capitol Police officers that is credited for saving many of the members of Congress. And the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy wants to be president of the United States and cannot even acknowledge that January 6th was an insurrection by a former president, for that you get the two-finger salute, you fucking tool. All right? That's one. Number two, on Saturday, 2 p.m., I am going to be live, doing a live Mea Culpa podcast with my special guest, Katie Fang. If you are in New York, this show starts at 2 o'clock. People, need to be there at least by no later than 1 o'clock. It's going to be a great time if you're in New York or close enough. You want to come see it. There are still a few seats left. citywinery.com. That's number two. Lastly, one of the things that Ben and I constantly talk about is the importance of Midas Touch Network, the importance of Political Beatdown, the importance of Mea Culpa. Why is this really important? Because here with us, you are getting no spin, no innuendo. You're getting straight facts. What we tell you is happening. It's actually happening. Now, we, of course, like everybody else, have an opinion on it, and you're certainly welcome to your own opinion. But I think we all stand in unison when we say, and again, it's us just now repeating Donald Trump. Hard for me to even say that I'm repeating him. I'm going to be your vengeance. On day one, I'm going to be a dictator. It's not Michael Cohen saying this. It is not Ben Meiselas saying that. It is not Liz Cheney in her book. And again, welcome to the conversation. She certainly didn't start it, but she wrote a very good book that deals with this topic as well. I spoke to John Dean today, who's actually working on a book as well on something very similar to this that ties Donald into it. Everybody is talking about Donald Trump's authoritarian comments. They're talking about the potential destruction of our democracy. And I want our brigaders to turn around and stop for a second. Let's just all stop for one brief second and take a deep, deep breath. We're talking about the end of American democracy. I mean, think about that. I mean, think when you were a year ago, 5 years ago, when you were 10 years old, did you ever think that America was not going to be a democracy, that as a country, we weren't going to continue to advance and to be better generation after generation after generation, whether it's civil rights, whether it's eradication of racism in its totality, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, that we would LGBTQ plus community, that we would always strive to be better, that we would strive to turn over this country to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on, better than when we accepted it from our forefathers. But that's not what's happening. We are legitimately looking at potentially the last election that the United States will ever engage in that counts. And I've said this so many times on this show, but it is absolutely worth repeating. Donald Trump used to parrot Vladimir Putin in a comment, and he would say, it doesn't matter who you vote for. All that matters is who's counting the vote. And that, if that doesn't ring as true could ring, I don't know what could. And it's why I say to each and every one of you, this Political Beatdown show, Mea Culpa as a show, all of the Midas Touch Network, we ask you to share with your friends. We ask you, let's every single week double our viewers. Let's double our Patreon, supporters. Let's constantly every week strive to double it. Why? Because if you do the math on it and we continuously double the people that are connected to Political Beatdown and to all of the podcasts that I previously mentioned, if we could do that, by the time November rolls around for the election, we as a collective group can smash the living shit out of this entire election and ensure that Donald Trump never returns to the White House, that our democracy will be saved. It is incumbent upon us to do this. And with that, I thank each and every single one of you for joining Patreon, for joining the Midas Touch Network, for following us here on Political Beatdown and subscribing and watching and being a part of my Mea Culpa podcast. It is so important that we do this together. One person can't do it alone. Myself and Ben, two people, can't do it alone. All we can do is try to put together the community, something that you help us to do each and every week. So with that, I just want to again personally thank each and every one of you. And I ask you to please make sure that you are sharing this time slot, the Political Beatdown time slot and the other shows and podcasts, and so that you see on the Midas Touch Network.
Folks, it is democracy over dictatorship. Democracy over dictatorship. Democracy over dictatorship. I saw some comments below and some questions. If we join patreon.com/politicalbeatdown to meet Michael Cohen at that Zoom meeting, is it an extra fee in addition to the Patreon membership? It is not. If you are a member of the Patreon, you get access to that exclusive meeting that will be taking place next Monday, December 11th. We're about to post that on the Patreon. It's going to be at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. December 11th. Be there. Meet Michael Cohen in that exclusive Zoom by joining patreon.com/political beatdown. Now, Michael Cohen and I are going to prepare an after show that gets exclusively posted on our Patreon. As I said, we don't have outside investors here at the Midas Touch Network or on Political Beatdown. So the way we support the growth of this network is through our pro-democracy sponsors, those ads that you see through our Patreon and through those emojis that you see down below. Go to patreon.com/political beatdown now. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you to the Brigaders. We appreciate you so much. We'll see you next time on Political Beatdown. Love you, Brigaders. Shout out to the Midas Mighty.